I think very often social entrepreneurs are afraid of making a profit. And they're afraid of doing things in like a very profit-minded mentality. Do not be afraid of that. Profitability is what makes you sustainable long-term, and it allows you to make the impact that you want to make on a long-term basis. Don't be afraid of profit, right? And do it always with a profit-minded mindset. That's what's going to let you make the impact that you want to make in the long term.
Global Socialpreneurs is brought to you in part by Positive Talk Radio, KKNW 1150 AM in Seattle. Check them out at www.positivetalkradio.net.
Welcome to Global Socialpreneurs, a one-of-a-kind talk show showcasing expert social entrepreneurs. Learn their stories and their secrets to creating a sustainable impact. Now, here is your host, social entrepreneur Anne Scotland.
Welcome back. I am so excited to be here today and to have all of you watching or listening again to Global Socialpreneurs. We're a show that seeks to increase the conversation globally about social entrepreneurship, creating awareness, helping people understand what it is, and for those individuals and groups out there who are already doing social entrepreneur work, we provide connections, resources, information, training, incredible amount of good teaching for you, and some of which you're going to get today around social entrepreneurship and how we can spread this message and do this work amazingly. So if you're new to the show, welcome. And social entrepreneurship is making human or environmental impact in a for-profit business as opposed to a nonprofit business. So for many people, they're not that familiar with this concept yet, even though it's been around since the 1980s. So we're looking to expand this idea because I believe that our vision is to have 9 billion social entrepreneurs, and there's no reason why not. So how can we make the world a better place economically? How can we solve the social and environmental problems that we're facing and do it in a for-profit way? So many exciting things. I can't even go into it right now. Also excited today to announce that we're streaming on new platforms that we haven't been on before. So now you can also watch us on Apple TV. You can watch us on Amazon, Roku, and a host of other platforms. So wherever you're watching us today, thank you so much for joining us. I'm just so glad to have you here. So I want to jump right in and introduce you to our special guest. I'm so excited that she's here today. Her name is Karen Gibbs, and she was introduced to me from a wonderful friend of mine over at Threads Worldwide, who you've already met on my show. And Karen Gibbs has been embedded in the work of social entrepreneurship for over 30 years. She is the co-founder of By Hand Consulting. And what she does is help entrepreneurs and homemade brands around the world get their products to market. Karen is really dedicated to, she's an advocate of handmade goods, which is incredible in environments where traditional modes of employment are less available than they used to be. And she believes that the income they can generate for families and individuals globally is really a change maker. Karen's an expert in ethical supply chains, artisan marketing, and of course, social entrepreneurship. Please help me welcome Karen Gibbs. Karen, it's so nice to have you here today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Anne.
I'm just thrilled. We had such a lovely conversation last time we talked, and I am so excited to be able to share the incredible work and knowledge that you have accumulated over the years in this incredible work you do. So you are a social entrepreneur.
I am a social entrepreneur.
And what's the nature of your social entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so I work with artisan businesses. So these are people who are making, selling, or sourcing handmade products. I've worked in this field, as you've mentioned, for 30 years. I say that I got my MBA in this field, having my own wholesale business where I was importing and selling handmade products. But now my work is really focused on supporting those other social entrepreneurs in this field to develop razor sharp marketing strategies so they can best use their resources to increase sales and build sustainability in this field.
Marvelous, marvelous. And we so need this work to be done. There's so many great intentions out there that don't come to fruition or aren't sustainable because they're lacking the pieces of the puzzle that you're bringing to the table. So tell me, what's the story behind Karen Gibbs? How did your career evolve to bring you into social entrepreneurship to begin with?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I got started very much from sort of an academic poverty alleviation, international economic development side. So that was what I was interested in, studied in school. And I moved back to Washington, D.C. in hopes of working for one of these really big international development agencies, and quickly found myself on a path where I felt like business would be a better tool for doing the social good that I saw out there in terms of addressing economic disparities, alleviating poverty, bringing income to rural areas. But I very much came at it from a point of view where I thought I was going to work for one of these big, huge international organizations, maybe work on some policy things, and found that business and just buying and selling stuff was a way that I felt like it was more effective, practical tool to achieve the same end results that we all shared.
Oh, that's excellent. I love that. And let me take it a step further then and say, how have you seen and how do you believe social entrepreneurship can create change in a way that traditional nonprofit efforts sometimes have not been able to?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that so many nonprofits and international development programs, which bring valuable, super important investments into fields, certainly, but so much of them are dependent upon grant funding, which is very limited, right? So your success you might be extremely successful, but once that grant ends, the work has to stop. So I really felt like business allowed both the greater possibility of that like long-term sustainability, right? The long-term impact could be just a higher chance of having success over a longer period of time. And I also felt like business is a little more flexible and adaptable than some of the bigger grant-funded projects, right? So as an entrepreneur, as we all know, we're trained to be responsive and change and adapt our business model as opportunities or challenges fit. And I didn't feel like that there was that same level of flexibility that you found in some of these other nonprofit fields. That was my personal experience.
Yeah, no, that's so insightful. And so what do you think helping people learn to earn a living as opposed to giving them endless amount of free supplies, for example? Mm-hmm. We've all heard the phrase, why teach a man why give a man a fish when you can teach him to fish? Or I think someone recently on the show said, for social entrepreneurs, it's why give a man a fish when you can teach him how to fish better? So what is the element of for-profit, because there's so many levels, from the person making the articles all the way up to giant conglomerates that are doing social enterprise. What is the psychological benefit, do you think, from teaching people how to make their own money as opposed to just giving them things?
So I think it's a true sense of empowering somebody to make choices for themselves versus being dependent upon choices that somebody else is making for them. So just think of the difference that I've seen the work that I do in the field that I work in make in people's lives. And when you're able to earn an income, particularly a sustainable income, and the choices that it allows a woman, a family, a community to make and how they want to spend money to better their lives, I think they know best what their communities needs, what their families need, what they individually need. And so it's just really, to me, empowering to see when we have mechanisms by which you can put cash in somebody's hand to make the decisions for themselves as to how they want to improve their lives.
Wow.
I think it gives empowerment, and I think it gives a sense of dignity too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
A sense of dignity. I was just going to say that as well. Or really a sense of pride, and something you said, which was deciding what they need most for themselves, as opposed to someone on the other side of the globe who's never walked in their shoes, never lived in their culture, never dealt with their social and religious environment, saying, oh, we're going to fix a problem that you guys have. But, you know, you're kind of, you're throwing a Band-Aid at something when you could maybe create some, you know, a healing mechanism. You can help them learn to heal it from the inside out, learning how it is, what they really need. I mean, someone was saying recently on the show too, you know, someone might say, oh, we're going to get, we're going to help solve diabetes in a developing country. And so they collect a lot of money. They make a great effort as a charity. But sometimes what they failed to do was realize what was really the most pressing thing on the ground. Diabetes is a terrible disease. But if people don't even have food, then we have another issue. Or if they don't have clean water, we have another issue. So do the thing you're passionate about, but let's embed that in something that's really practical. And if we can do that in a way where the person on the ground is also finds a way to make money and support themselves, how incredibly beautiful is that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So Karen, tell me, so why are you passionate about artisan products? I know you are, so I can't wait to hear what you're going to share with us.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've spent 30 years working in this field, right? And I want 30 more, right? I think I find this sector to be so compelling and so interesting, and as it's evolving. But really, it boils down to three things in terms of why I choose to work and stay in the artisan sector. So if we look at the artisan sector, which there's many ways to define it, but it's basically products that are made by hand, usually in cottage industry settings, right? Where part of or all of the product is made in somebody's home or a home-based workshop or a community-based workshop. So if we look at those products and that kind of category, it's the second largest source of income in rural areas of developing countries. So often, you know, handcrafted products or an artisan made product, we sort of think of as being the things, you know, that are for sale along the road to the airport in the country that we've just traveled in, right? We think of it as sort of this like touristy souvenir. But in fact, the sector has huge scalable impact, right? As the second largest source of income after agriculture. So if you're interested in ways to bring jobs and income to underserved regional geographic areas of the world, doing something in the artisan, handcraft, hand workers sector is a really good way to make scalable, effective impact. So that's one reason, right? Which I think is oftentimes sort of a misperception of the artisan sector of being, you know, a small kind of fringe sector. In fact, it represents a huge number of people across the world in areas that are historically underserved. The second reason why I work in this sector is because it's about anywhere from 2/3 to 3/4, sometimes more, depending what product it is and what area, but it's women working in this sector. So this is oftentimes considered an informal sector, right? Where you're working at home at a home-based workshop, community-based workshop. It's very oftentimes a great source of income for women because it allows them a lot of flexibility to also care for their families, care for their gardens, care for their community. So it's a flexible source of income and a very important source of income. We know from all kinds of research, right, that when you put income in the hands of women, it gets invested into health and well-being, into education for children, into children. So a great source of income for women around the world. And the third reason is that I personally believe that handmade products, small batch production products, are intrinsically just beautiful. They make me feel beautiful when I'm wearing them, when I have them in my home, when I can gift them to somebody. So that just power of beauty to make me feel good and connect me with where my product came from, that to me is really important. And then when you are able to wear something that an artisan on the other side of the world has made, and they see you appreciating how beautiful it is, the sense of dignity that it gives to that maker is undescribable. So that's why this sector is so important to me.
That is amazing. I so appreciate all 3 points that you shared. They're so relevant. And let me ask you a question about excuse me, supply and demand a little bit. So in a world where we have gotten so used to mass-produced objects that we buy in our lives for ourselves, for our homes, and often at the expense, at human expense in the area of creation, people are underpaid, exploited, and many other things. How do you see the public learning to adjust their taste or needs to become buyers for more artisan products?
That's a great question. So I think getting curious, right, as consumers, right, because we're all consumers, if we start to see ourselves as agents for change, and that if we really accept the fact that our wallets and how we spend money is a way we can vote for the world that is around us, right? So that's sort of the first step, is that we can all, as consumers, understand that we have the ability through how we spend money to be an agent for change of the things that we think are important. So that's the first step. And the second step is I just really encourage people to, and I see it, right? I see it on an anecdotal basis. I see it in terms of data that we have out there, is that people are spending more time researching the purchases that they're making. And they're researching it against the things they care about, which could be a wide variety of things, right? It could be gender things. It could be political things. It could be environmental things. It could be social justice things. So just taking that little bit of a pause button, right, to do a little more research, ask a few more questions about what it is that we're purchasing, right? So, so whether handmade products come disguised as all kinds of things. So to me, it's, the artisan sector is my passion. But I really just encourage everybody to stop and think about what are the things that they care most about, and how are they going to have that reflected in the purchases that they make and how they're spending their money, either on a big scale or a little scale. There's certainly quite a few artisan products fall under sustainable products. They fall under ethically sourced products. They fall under increasing interest in terms of like transparency of the supply chain, so where your product is coming from.
I was about to ask you about that actually, but before we get to that, because I don't want to miss this out. So as far as from a retail basis, from a marketplace basis, I'm assuming there are needs in helping re-educate the public in their buying habits and what they buy. If we want to buy, we want to buy more artisan products. Sounds to me like there could be some great social entrepreneurship opportunities that exist out there for people to create websites, marketplaces that are easily accessible, like, there we say it, the mini Amazon, but for artisan and handmade products, where it's kind of like your first go-to, right? Is that something that you think would make a big difference in helping re-educate the public, or do you think it would be something else better used to do that?
That's a great question. I think generally speaking, people don't go out to buy an artisan product. They go out to buy a product for cooking or a product for gardening, or go out to buy clothing, or go out to buy things for the home. So I think making artisan or handmade products like a general category of something that somebody is going to go out and buy is not necessarily the right approach. Mm-hmm. But to saying here's a beautiful throw for your couch because it's starting to get cold outside, and it's handmade by women in Cambodia, sort of the description of it, I think that's the more impactful thing. And I also think that artisan, handmade, handcrafted products are a little bit, they can sometimes be misunderstood in our world as being a little fringe, right? Mm-hmm. So I really like people to buy a product because it's a beautiful design, it's well priced based off of other things in the marketplace, right? And it's a functional product that you're going to use for your lifestyle or for your gifting lifestyle. And the fact that it's artisan made, handmade, fair trade is sort of the secondary thing. So,
I love that. No, that's such a great answer. And I so appreciate that, because it does kind of give us as consumers a little more guidance as to how we can best do this. And most of us buy way more than we need. So if you don't need 3 salad bowls, usually, I mean, unless they're the small ones you eat out of, right? But you could use one really nice one, or even 2, and be willing to pay a little bit more, buy less than, buy 1 or 2 instead of 3 or 4 that you keep in your cupboard, and know that you made an impact by buying it, that you're helping a family sustain itself. You're helping, in many cases, as you said, a woman have employment and income that she's allowed to use, that she may be using to help educate her children. There's so many pluses to that. And I know, especially in the US, I don't know, I mean, for all the money we spend, a lot of us are still very deal oriented. We want to always get a deal. And that's why we have all the dollar stores and everything else, right? So it takes maybe just a little introspection and self-discipline to say, okay, it's not just about price. It's about sourcing. It's about who made it. It's about respecting this article as a gift from another human being, as opposed to something that was just cranked out on a machine by the tens of thousands. Like, this actually enriches my life. I think of the Buddhist lifestyle, the Buddhist kind of prayer or appreciation over food, when they think of, they pause to think of and thank all the people in the chain that brought this food to their table. From the person who harvested the seeds to the person who sold the seeds and planted the seeds and watered them and tilled them and harvested them and put them in bags and carried them and ground them and turned them into flour and sent them to a bakery who made bread, and the people, just all the way to your table. I think if we learn to think a little bit more that way, it will not only enrich our lives, but will really enrich the opportunities that people have around the world.
Yeah, but I think, Anne, you got onto a great idea. Why don't we just reframe people's minds about what kind of deal they're getting, right? Yeah. You could get a deal for like the best price, but what about getting a deal for like the best impact, right?
Absolutely. Okay, I'm writing this down, like best impact deal.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I was just talking to my last guest about social capital being as opposed to financial capital. So it's that same principle, social capital being what is the value that human beings are bringing to the table in any given situation, as opposed to just the dollar. And what's the best impact deal as opposed to just the cheapest deal, right? So we don't need to be cheap.
No.
But this is great. No, I love this conversation. There's so much potential to it. And we literally could do that for a whole second episode, because that would be really fun to unpack. And for our viewers, I would love to get your comments on this. So if you want to comment in the notes of the platform you're watching, or if you want to hop over to the website, globalsocialpreneurs.com, you can email me directly from there, and I can also forward it on. So let us know if you like this idea. If you have any great brainstorming ideas, we would love to hear from you, and maybe even have you on the show or interview you for a combined show. So let us know, because I think this would be a lot of fun. So there's one other thing I wanted to ask you, Karen, that was that kind of were moving towards a few minutes ago anyway, which is a lot of these artisan and handmade products that we see in Western countries. We often see them as called fair trade products. What is it you would like to reframe in our views, our perception of what fair trade products means?
Oh, good question. So unfortunately, I think fair trade products so often pigeonhole you into thinking of what I will call pity products, right? Oh, you should buy this because it's doing good for the world. Please buy this. Please buy this. So I'd like to just have us reframe it and think of a fair trade product as a sustainable product. It's an ethically sourced product. It's a handmade product. It's a socially responsible product. It's a product that has real transparency into who made it. It's a maker-made product. It's a small batch production product, right? It's exclusive because there's not that many out there. If we can start to reframe, I think fair trade products can be described by any one of those things. And if we sort of, expand out our vocabulary, the last thing we want to do is make somebody feel guilty and then make them buy a product, right? If they're buying out of pity, there's no sustainability out of it. If they're buying because it's beautiful and it's well made and it's a good price for how unique it is, then there's potential that they're going to buy a whole lot more in the future. So just any of those ways of describing products that can help us elevate and see a handmade product as being of higher value than how so often fair trade products are perceived, I think that does well for the world. I think there's some great brands that are helping us see fair trade in a different way. We look at all the fair trade jeans that Madewell is making, right? Or the way that fair trade coffee has really become sort of mainstream. So there's definitely some products out there that are helping us to see fair trade as not fringe, but actually the potential to reach some real mainstream market.
I love that. And I love the example of coffee. Someone in my house is a coffee connoisseur, which is lucky for me because I get professional espressos in the morning. But he's very selective about the beans, and fair trade is pretty much close to the number one thing. Then it goes to varieties and all these other things. And yeah, it's funny when we talk about coffee, which often happens in my life. I don't see the fair trade part as being at all strange or awkward. I'm kind of like, of course, why wouldn't, who would you be to not buy fair trade coffee, sort of? But then if I go to a store that is retail of just jewelry that's been made from many different countries and many different styles of those countries, I still and it has fair trade. I'm like, well, that's awesome. But then I also am kind of like, oh, I should buy it because kind of do a good deed, as opposed to that I need I need a new sweater. There's sort of there's that tiny little bit of shift there where you know what I'm talking about, right? So I love that. So I think there's a huge opportunity for us to open our mindset around what fair trade means. And I think there's also, I'm a writer and a wordsmith, always new words that can be created and used. All these words were created at some point. So finding new and better words or phrases to define things more clearly to generate the meaning and evoke the feeling that we want to bring out. So again, to you and all the viewers and listeners, if you have any great ideas about words and phrases for fair trade or to create a nuance of something slightly different, we would love to hear that. So Karen, I just wondered, as I always ask my guests, if they had one piece of advice they could give to social entrepreneurs of all kinds, what would that be?
So I probably have two. The first is, I think successful entrepreneurs are basically creative problem solvers. So just never be too overwhelmed by the challenges that your business faces you. You have it inside of you, the ability to solve the problem in a creative way. That's your greatest talent as an entrepreneur, and just lean into it, right? The second is, I think very often social entrepreneurs are afraid of making a profit. And they're afraid of doing things in like a very profit-minded mentality. Do not be afraid of that. Profitability is what makes you sustainable long-term, and it allows you to make the impact that you want to make on a long-term basis. Don't be afraid of profit, right? And do it always with a profit-minded mindset. That's what's going to let you make the impact that you want to make in the long term.
Wow. Wow. I think that you hit two nails on the head there. Wow. And I'm going to run with the second one. Not being afraid of profit is so huge. And it's such a strange concept that, we have to kind of, again, retrain our thinking around it and what that means. And again, we could do a whole nother show on that. Maybe we will with you, Karen. But it's really interesting. So for example, I was talking to a real mover and shaker from the social entrepreneurship global community. And he was mentioning that one of, he's more into the numbers and statistics. And one of the things he mentioned was that they find that women social entrepreneurs tend to be much more successful. Nothing against the men social entrepreneurs, of course, but they tend to overall, their programs last longer, they're more sustainable, and the purpose of the program, the impact that is being created is greater overall. However, he said, we wanted to find out why. And what we realized that in many places, in many countries, many of the women social entrepreneurs weren't paying themselves. And I said, wow. And this is a slightly different subject from crafts, handcrafts, and homemade goods, right? But I thought that is so interesting and such an important conversation for social entrepreneurs and especially women. This is the fundamental issue of what you were just talking about, not being afraid to make a profit. And the thing that I say is we have to be willing to lead by example. If it is my objective to help create a warm, inclusive community for social entrepreneurship, to offer people coaching, training, masterminds, if I don't make a profit, I'm not leading by example. I have to demonstrate to them, you can also do this. And finding the tools and the means and the support to do that it's there and it's available, but we have to actually start thinking that way, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
Yeah.
One last question, and this was going back to something you said earlier, and then we will wrap up in just a moment. But the last question was, of the people that you work with and see in all these various communities, do you run across entrepreneurs making handmade crafts that are themselves looking to be social entrepreneurs or interested in becoming social entrepreneurs? Do you ever see that?
So I think most of the people who are working in this handmade sector, I think ultimately they are social entrepreneurs, even if they don't necessarily realize it. Because for the most part, people have gotten into this field because they want to sell the products that are made from where they come from, right? And that's because they want to generate income into their community, right? Which is the foundation of a social entrepreneur, right? Of really deciding where is your business going to make an impact, right? So either they're doing it that, or two, they're doing it in order to preserve a traditional craft technique. And that preservation of a craft technique is preserving culture. And I think your ability to preserve culture and kind of invest in culture is a form of social entrepreneurship. So often I think that there are some people out there who are like, all they're doing is buying and selling goods and they don't really care about where they came from or where they're going. But those people are so few and far between. I really think the artisan sector is and has always been made up of social entrepreneurs, but they don't see themselves that way, right? Because it's just sort of their nature to do what they're doing. But I think a lot of people now, I can help them say, hey, listen, the fact that you are by bringing jobs back to your community, that's something that actually can add value out there in the marketplace and in the world. And how can we find some metrics by which you can count how many jobs you created? How did income increase over time, right? Because that's a value add proposition to them as an entrepreneur in the world. So
that is excellent. Thank you so much. That's such a great answer. Excuse me. Thought I was going to get all the way to the end there without having to get any water. Such a great answer. And I love it so much because it's so much about what the work we're trying to do here with Global Socialpreneurs as well, which is increasing global audience. Anyone can watch this show in the world for free. Helping people who are already doing this understand that they're part of a network of social entrepreneurs, even though they may not even know it yet, that is changing the way the world works. It's changing the way the system, we're going behind the backs of the big dogs to change it ourselves. And it's much more sustainable. It's healthy, just by creating a new income in your home, in the local place that this person lives. You're supporting your local community by buying goods and services there. You're helping support the entire economy of your area, your state, your country. So it is a really incredible and exciting thing to share. And again, because, we think there's the potential to have, I don't know, maybe 9 billion social entrepreneurs.
Yeah. And I think also, sometimes I've done a lot of work over the years with Pottery Barn, part of the Williams-Sonoma family. And, oftentimes the company itself wasn't, at a time 20 years ago plus, they weren't really that interested in buying handmade or fairly traded products, but their buyer was, right? So you don't have to necessarily have your own business in order to be a social entrepreneur, I don't think. Because if you have a budget, if you're responsible for a budget in a company, even a really large company, you have the power to make some influence of how that budget is spent, right? So
absolutely.
I don't think you have to go out and start your own company. I think if we can also help everybody realize that even in the context of the company that they are an employee of, they have the ability to make some entrepreneurial decisions about how they're going to operate their sense of responsibilities and budget to make a difference in the world.
Oh my goodness. And there's a whole nother episode. My goodness, what am I going to do? We have to wrap up, but thank you so much for that. That is so wonderful and encouraging, and piggybacks on so much of what the content of this ongoing show is about, which is redefining social entrepreneurship. Again, more for another day, because there's a lot of different definitions. Some people are very kind of hardcore about what this is the definition. And then there's a lot of flexibility in how we define this and how everyone can be involved. So thank you for sharing that. That is just so helpful. Wow. I hate to wrap up. Viewers, thank you so much. Karen, thank you for being here. So appreciate it. And
thank you, Anne.
Delighted to have you here, and look forward to talking to you again soon. I hope for all of you there, you can check the notes, find out more about Karen Gibbs and how you can reach out to her and find out more about the work that she is doing. So for all of our viewers and listeners, thank you again for being with us here today. We are streaming live on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern, and I think that's 5 GMT. So look us up, check us out on whatever platform works for you. If you have any questions or need to help finding our show on a platform that you have access to, just go to the website, globalsocialpreneurs.com, and drop me an email, and I will send you more information on how you can be more involved and watch the show. Thank you to all of you. Thanks again to Karen. And as always, everyone, be kind to others today and be kind to yourself. Thanks so much. Bye. See you next time.